Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good night, and welcome back for another dose of your weekly Marvel Snap tier list, courtesy of the team here at Marvel Snap Zone. It's almost time for global release. It's kind of scary, really. Not long now until October 18th makes its way around the corner and we have potentially millions of new players joining the Snap player base. It's all very exciting, and today is the start of a brand new season as well. The Symbiote event is now live, with Miles Morales Spider-Man now being a card that is legal in the game, and we look forward to seeing how it will affect the metagame going forward. It's very surprising how much can change in the space of a week, is it not? We find ourselves in a bit of a sour patch, perhaps, for this week. It's going to be more of a quick roundup, just to kind of go over the state of the game and kind of highlight the decks who are the biggest winners and losers of this week, because there's not all that much for us to cover otherwise. As always, I'll give you a little bit of a breakdown about how our tier list at Marvel Snap Zone works. If all you want is the tier list, it will be on screen for you very, very shortly, or you can go and grab it from the article that's in the description box below. But we do now cultivate this list not only from our own experiences on the ladder, but also from the play data provided by Snap.fan about average cubes per game, win rates on certain cards, and similar statistics. This week, kind of, affected a bit by the peak, shall we say. The peak, not the most popular featured location for 2 days out of the last week, and it kind of made Mr. Negative very, very good. So unsurprisingly, the negative deck has had a bit of a climb this week, but it does seem like it might have been doing that regardless outside of the peak being a featured location. Unfortunately, some of the new mainstays of the game from last week have fallen by the wayside this week, and some old players who we thought had been nerfed down have not been nerfed quite so hard. Lastly, it's pretty clear to anyone with a pair of eyes that Sera is just the single best card in the game. As you'll see in a moment with this week's ratings, wherever Sera goes, wins will follow. And with the global release on the horizon and Season 5 just getting started, it might just be the right time to give Sera a bit of a nerf, as we welcome a huge amount of new players to Marvel Snap. So, with all that said, if you haven't subscribed to the channel already, please consider doing so. We want to be able to make more Marvel Snap content for you and keep you up to date with what's going on in the game as these tournament modes and more come into existence as the game goes into global release. Make sure you turn on that notification button and just make sure you're subscribed. We'd love to have you around for more in the future. Let's take a look at what exactly the tier list looks like for this week. So, unsurprisingly to anyone who's been playing pretty regularly, the kingpin of the game does remain this Sera negative archetype. Tier 2 this week, a little bit more fleshed out, but as you can see, a lot of Sera and a lot of negative. Magic Destroy, Sera Miracle, Mr. Negative, the Patriot deck taking its way up ever so slightly, and Destroyer. Tier 3 filled out this week with the ongoing Kazoo deck, the mostly Pool 1, Pool 2 deck that people are using as a budget alternative. The Sandwave deck, the very much anti-meta choice that Sera Negative has to contend with, but very rarely loses many cubes to. The hand size deck, unfortunately having a very sour week and falling off in terms of gameplay. And then we look at some other mainstays of the game in Tier 3 in the form of Wongoing and the Lockjaw deck, of course. Tier 4, interesting one as an addition this week in tier number 4. There's a lovely guide written on Reddit by user Nasir, I believe, about an archetype combining the Hela discard deck alongside some Sandman anti-meta stun. We don't have enough statistics on that deck to really kind of give it a ranking so far this week, but we've included it in tier 4 so you can check it out in the article if you like while we gather some more data. In addition to that, though, we do have a few other decks joining it in Tier 4. The Deathpool deck, the Dracula discard deck, the Daredevil control deck, traditional Hela discard, and of course Cerebro Deuce at the bottom of Tier 4 as well. Of course, some budget options remain mostly the same as before, various Sandman and control style decks alongside a Pool 2 only version of the hand size control deck if you're looking for budget options that don't have too many Pool 3 cards that can challenge the existing metagame. So, as I say, not going to be quite as detailed this week, but we are going to take a look at the big winners and losers of Marvel Snap heading into global release. So let's do exactly that, shall we? So it remisses me to talk once again, one final time, I hope, about Sera-negative. Unsurprisingly, this deck just continues to be the most dominant force in the game. Although counters have definitely started to become more popular, it feels like the deck will be the best until it's nerfed into the ground. It should be noted that some of the high win rate for this deck probably does come from the peak being a featured location, which makes it difficult to tell exactly how good it is, but we suspect that it still very much remains on the top just because it is the best Sera deck in the format. Looking to play Mr. Negative on turn 4, Sera on turn 5, spew your hand onto the table on turn 6 and 7 if you can make turn 7 from Magic as well. You can, of course, use things like Mystique to copy Sera, to copy Iron Man, to copy Blue Marvel, and then you just have some all-round good on-curve plays. Things like playing Bishop on turn 3, Angela on turn 2, that also play exceptionally well on the final turns of the game. You can just add a pile of stats to them in a pinch. The flex spot in this deck, definitely Rogue at the moment, but she seems obviously fantastic in a metagame that is full of this deck. So, still kind of the kingpin of the game. I guess the smallest winner of this week looks to be a bit of a return to form. Very much the traditional, normal, by itself, no Sera, Mr. Negative deck. Again, we kind of suspect this week that the peak had, some responsibility for this deck coming back to such a high rank, but it's undeniable that once the negative psychological impact of Mr. Negative's nerf had gone, the deck has made its way back to a similar power level as before. It's definitely slightly weaker, because it feels more like a high roll combo deck these days, looking to snap early and retreat aggressively if things don't play out your way, to make up for those 3 points of power the Mr. Negative lost. You're very much looking to Mr. Negative as soon as possible in this deck these days. Most of your cards kind of suck if you don't draw Mr. Negative. So until another take on this deck is popular, very much treat this as a snap or retreat style of deck moving forward. But once we accept that, there are, of course, new worlds of possibilities, and it can be a very well-oiled, high-rolling machine. The most skeptical card here, in our opinion, is definitely Jane Foster. It's hard to deny the power of drawing half your deck on turn 5, to be completely honest, if you miss a negative on turn 4. But it does feel like maybe something like Wong can fill that role to give you a different, more stable high roll potential that doesn't feel quite as needy of drawing negative on turn 4. We'll have to wait and see in the coming weeks. The biggest loser of this week, unfortunately, is definitely the hand size deck. This was a newly surging archetype last week, was the surprise of last week, if you like. But it really hasn't done very well this week. It kind of has fallen by the wayside. So if you're looking for a deck that's a decent pick, if you enjoy the style of gameplay, but needs a very specific draw to compete with the decks above it, this might very well be the deck for you, because it is very, very fun to play. It capitalizes on the Collector and Devil Dinosaur as win conditions, paying you off for having large chunks of cards in your hand, and you'll be looking to grow them as big as you can, with all the support that's in the deck. The only real flex slots here are Beast and Arnim Zola to some extent, but Arnim does feel like more of a staple for copying that turn 5 Devil Dino than ever before. Beast, however, mostly here to clear up a location. It buffs the Collector and Devil Dinosaur in a pinch, but lets you kind of back out of a location you know you've lost and re-establish bodies into a location you still think you can win. And that Arnim Zola definitely just, in my opinion, far too good at making two 15 power Devil Dinos on the last turn of the game. My favourite inclusion for this deck, very much Nick Fury. Nice to find it having a home, and kind of letting you fill your hand with stuff to grow those threats into very, very large problematic cards for your opponent in the late game. So yeah, not quite as much to talk about this week, unfortunately. Again, if you do want the full tier list, you want to check out all the deck lists, export them for yourself, try them out, give them a spin, articles in the description, or just hop on over to marvelsnapzone.com and grab it from the front page. There's all kinds of information, and many of these decks at this point have very well established deck guides you can go and check out if you're not sure how to play them too. If you do have any tips or tricks you want to highlight for next week's tier list, by all means let us know in the comments section below. We'd love to hear about it and add them to this video format going forward. One final time, if you haven't already, chuck us a subscription. I want to see you back for some more Marvel Snap, and I want to keep doing this as the game goes into global launch. So support the channel, make sure you follow in, and just let us know what you think of what we're up to. For now, that should be everything. I've been HowlingMines, you've been amazing, and this has been Marvel Snap Zone. Have a good one.